Imagine boarding a plane in New York after lunch and sipping espresso in London before your watch adjusts. For decades, that dream belonged to one aircraft, Concorde. Glamorous, fast, and loud enough to send dogs scurrying. When it retired in 2003 after a fatal crash, post 9/11 downturns, and sky-high costs, supersonic passenger flight seemed over. Now, a new wave of engineers, regulators, and investors is working to bring it back. Quieter, greener, and hopefully profitable. Concorde's long shadow? Concorde still casts a long cultural shadow. Only 20 were built, and though it could cross the Atlantic in about 3.5 hours, the economics never really worked. Tickets were astronomically priced, fuel burn was huge, and a crash in 2,000 plus rising maintenance costs sealed its fate. Regulators also banned most civil supersonic flight over land decades ago, forcing Concorde into limited ocean crossing routes. Any company daring to revive supersonic travel has to beat those same obstacles. Noise that rattles windows, fuel bills that rattle accountants, and certification rules older than the pilots flying the planes. Boom. Supersonic and the return of speed. The most prominent contender today is Boom Supersonic. Its technology demonstrator, the sleek XB1, made headlines in early 2025 when it went supersonic over California's Mojave Desert, reaching about Mach 1.1, the first privately developed civil aircraft to break the sound barrier. This was more than a marketing stunt. It showed that Boom's aerodynamic design actually works. But XB1 is just a testbed. The company's real ambition is Overture, a passenger aircraft promised to carry around 65 to 80 travelers at speeds up to Mach 1.7, cutting a New York to London flight to roughly 3.5 hours. Several major airlines, including United, American, and Japan Airlines, have placed orders or pre-orders for Overture, giving Boom a paper book of about 130 aircraft. Those agreements, however, are conditional. The airlines want guarantees on safety, performance, and sustainability before they write final checks. And there's another hurdle. After Rolls-Royce bowed out of supplying an engine in 2022, Boom chose to develop a brand new power plant called Symphony with Florida Turbine Technologies, GE Additive, and Standard Aero. Designing and certifying a clean sheet supersonic engine is a costly, complex endeavor. If it succeeds, it will be an aviation milestone, but it's a risk that has undone other projects. Boom has also built an Overture superfactory in Greensboro, North Carolina, intending to scale production if the aircraft clears technical and regulatory gates. Still, its timeline depends on more than its own engineering. It hinges on noise standards, sustainable fuel availability, and government rule changes. NASA's quiet revolution. While Boom builds an airline, NASA is trying to rewrite the rulebook with the X-59 Quest. This sleek experimental jet, built with Lockheed Martin, isn't meant to carry passengers. Its job is to prove that quiet supersonic is possible, that you can shape and spread shockwaves so the boom becomes a muted thump. Regulators currently ban civilian aircraft from breaking the sound barrier over land in the United States under Federal Aviation Regulation 91.817. NASA wants to gather community response data to show that new, less disruptive standards could safely replace that blanket ban. The X-59 has already completed low-speed taxi tests in California, moving under its own power, and is preparing for first flight after several delays. Once it flies and noise trials begin over selected U.S. communities, the data could give the Federal Aviation Administration a foundation to craft new rules. Without such standards, supersonic airliners would remain mostly confined to oceanic routes, just like Concorde. Policy winds are shifting. There are signs the U.S. is ready to rethink its stance. In June 2025, a presidential executive order directed the FAA to accelerate updates to supersonic regulations and remove outdated barriers. That doesn't instantly legalize overland Mach 1, but it signals a shift from half a century of prohibition to active rulemaking. Europe, by contrast, is more cautious. The European Union Aviation Safety Agency emphasizes the need for robust environmental and noise evidence before considering broad overland supersonic permissions. In other words, the first new generation of fast passenger jets may find more friendly skies over the United States if NASA's data hold up, while Europe waits and watches. The sustainability question. Speed isn't the only modern pressure. Aviation is under intense scrutiny for its carbon footprint. Supersonic flight by nature burns more fuel per passenger kilometer than subsonic travel. Boom and others promise to run on 100% sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, and offset residual emissions, branding their products net zero from day one. But the SAF market is tiny. According to the International Air Transport Association, global SAF production will roughly double in 2025 to about 2 million tons, but that still represents less than 1% of total jet fuel demand. Prices remain high, and scaling supply is uncertain without strong policy incentives. If supersonic operators must rely on expensive, sustainable aviation fuel to stay climate-friendly, their already premium ticket prices will climb higher. United and American have explicitly tied their Overture deals to sustainability requirements, meaning if the planes can't meet carbon and fuel standards at a viable cost, orders could evaporate. Lessons from Ariane's collapse. The risk of bold plans outpacing financial reality is clear from Ariane. The Nevada-based company once promised the AS-2 supersonic business jet and had an engine program with GE called Affinity. But in 2021, Ariane shut down after failing to secure enough capital, and GE shelved Affinity. The episode showed how difficult it is to finance an all-new engine and aircraft without deep, sustained backing. For Boom and any future rival, Ariane's fate is a cautionary tale. Market math and route reality. For supersonic travel to succeed this time, the business model must work where Concorde's failed. The first factor is utilization. Planes must fly often and across profitable networks. If overland bans remain, routes will be limited to oceans. New York to London, Los Angeles to Tokyo, Miami to São Paulo. That market exists but is small. The second factor is cost. These aircraft burn more fuel and need entirely new supply chains. Boom hopes its factory can drive down production costs, but early units will be pricey. The third factor is revenue. Corporations and wealthy travelers will pay for speed, but post-pandemic remote work may have chipped away at the premium business market. If NASA's quiet boom data persuade regulators to open at least some overland corridors, the economics improve dramatically. Suddenly, New York to Los Angeles or Chicago to San Francisco could become 3-hour dashes. That scale could support fleets, not just niche trophy routes. Other players and military spin-offs. Few competitors remain serious beyond Boom. Spike Aerospace still touts a supersonic business jet, but without clear funding or engine partners, it remains speculative. Ariane is gone. Hermes, meanwhile, is pursuing hypersonic technology primarily for defense. While it made headlines with its quarter-horse Mk-1 flight in 2025, that's aimed at military R&D, not commercial tickets. In essence, the civil supersonic race is down to one determined private player. Boom, with NASA's research acting as a regulatory enabler. Timelines and reality checks. Aviation programs are notorious for delays, and supersonic projects add extra hurdles. Boom has already pushed back timelines, and Overture won't enter service until engines, certification, and regulations align. The XB-1's planned supersonic flights in 2025 show Boom can test high-speed aerodynamics, but moving from demonstrator to certified airliner is a huge leap. The FAA's new rules will take years of proposals, comments, and environmental reviews, and Europe moves even slower. Realistically, the first new supersonic passenger flights will likely be premium over-water routes, New York to London or Tokyo sometime in the 2030s if Boom's plan holds. Expanding beyond that depends on NASA's X-59 noise tests and future regulatory approval. Without it, supersonic travel may stay an expensive transatlantic niche. So, will we see another Concorde? The answer is a qualified yes. Technically, the dream is alive. Boom's XB-1 has already broken the sound barrier, and NASA's X-59 is inching toward flight to prove quiet supersonic is possible. Politically, the United States is finally updating its half-century-old bans, though Europe remains hesitant. Economically, however, the hardest work lies ahead. A clean-sheet supersonic engine must be built and certified. Sustainable aviation fuel must scale far beyond today's tiny supply, and ticket pricing must balance premium appeal with operating costs. If those pieces fall into place, we could see a new generation of supersonic jets. Smaller, quieter, greener, and hopefully profitable, flying well before mid-century. But this won't be Concorde's lavish, government-backed repeat. It will be a tougher, market-driven story, where the technology must meet noise and climate standards from day one and prove it can pay its way. And that's the latest on the race to bring supersonic flight back to our skies. If you love this deep dive into the future of aviation, hit that like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, fly fast, stay curious, and keep looking up.